Your bitter look has left me stunned in suspense, wondering if I would have suffered if I did not love you as I do now. How pitiable our soul is, for silence is always met with silence. For something to end, a soul to be redeemed, for a pain to break out, a human to be tortured, hearing one sentence would suffice. Tasting one kiss would suffice. I wonder, as of now, who would write? From which love? From which anxiety? From which land? Farewell to you makes love hell. Being with you makes love limbo. Why does heaven sneer at me in this mayhem? This poem is by Phaedra, but not probably the one you know from Euripides, Seneca, Jean Racine, or even Sarah Kane. It's my Phaedra. 3 years and 3 days ago, I started my PhD in drama. That's a practice-led one. I started analyzing 5 play adaptations of the same mythical story about a queen who falls in love with her stepson. In Greek culture, Phaedra and Hippolytus, and in Persian culture, it's Sudaba and Siavash. 3 Iranian play adaptations, 2 British ones. An analysis of these work, which had to lead me to a point that I write my own adaptation based on the same original source text, as well as the process I was now a part of. Analyzing the play, all plays from the writer's perspective. I wanted to do something like, to be a bit different from 2,500 years of adapting that storyline. And I thought I should start with a big change, the change that had never happened before. So I altered the role of stepmother to mother. I talked about it with some people. I presented it here at EAP, and it was a bit of controversy. You know, people said to me, "Oh wow, are you gonna do that?" I think in Australia it would be a big problem, like very controversial. I said, I think everywhere controversial. Do you know any place that a mother and son fall in love and then that's okay? So I was so excited about that change. I thought, oh man, you did a big job, you know, you can stick with it and just write your play. I named my play Night Murder, a mixture of 2 words, nightmare and murder, because that was a nightmare of a king who was in a very bad situation in which his wife and his son are accused of having an illicit love. The both original source texts end up in the death of the both characters, because the prince is not going to be a part of that betrayal, if you like that word. And then he was accused by the queen, and the problem was there. So I thought that change is interesting, but still there was a question there. Why do I change that, you know? Just to get more attraction? Or having a more controversial play? For what reason, really? I would like to admit that at the time, I was thinking of doing something that could never be out of date. But then I realized that, you know, it's not a very good point, you know. I could have written that 10 years ago, 20 years later, anytime, anywhere. Why am I doing it now? That was the question. And I thought of myself. I'm a foreigner living overseas. And I experienced a couple of bad situations in which I felt discriminated. I felt racism, and I didn't like that, you know. My intention was to write a play in which I could show inequality is not working. It's a bad thing for the whole world. I wanted to show my audience, my Australian audience, my Western audience, if I'm gonna like get it performed in Europe, UK, North America, wherever, which is English is spoken, to show them that, you know, we have a similar story, and not only us, other nations have a similar story about a queen who falls in love with her stepson. But again, I was thinking that, okay, you say people are more similar than different, but we know it, it's too obvious. What is the point? What is the point of doing this now? I was lacking something, and I didn't know what it is. I didn't know how can actually connect it to our era, to 2016, 2015. So I asked myself a question. I wanted to be honest with myself that what is my main concern as a migrant, as a foreigner living now in Australia? And immediately I answered to it. Racism, discrimination, inequality in any sense for anyone from any gender or background or culture or whatever. So I asked Phaedra that, who are you, where are you from? It wasn't obvious in the Hippolytus by Euclides. In Persian original source text, she is from a land that we call it today Yemen. So both of them were from somewhere, they were foreigners. So I asked Phaedra to travel from a Greek text to a Persian one. And I mixed Persian characters with one foreigner who was playing one of the main roles in the play. The love between mom and son was still there. Phaedra was from Europe, where fundamentalist Christians were dominating those lands. They wanted to kind of do suicide attacks, killing ambassadors, foreigners, whatever that we can see in this world now. So European people jumped on the boats and tried to reach Persia. Persia, which once was big enough to reach Mediterranean shores. And there, the king of Iran, or as you like to call it for the ancient time, Persia, wanted to be against them. He started building big dams on the shores. He didn't want to let them in. There were many issues around that. And Siavash, the son, was against those things. He started defending them, but suddenly mom fell in love. And it was clear there was no way to escape. I started by saying that, you know, we should be no judgmental against that thing, because this play is about equality. So I would like my audience to be neutral about the play. Just see what happens and then make a decision about that. So there was a fire test in which the sinner would burn and the innocent would survive. Phaedra and her son, they both had to go through the fire and they both were proven innocent. So the mom got mad and the son got depressed. They started talking more later because refugees were still reaching the borders and the king was so angry. He started paying people smugglers. Didn't work out. So he found another solution to it. He asked Greece for renting a Greek island to send the refugees there. The good ones can go back to Persia. The bad ones will stay there forever. And we had many European people, or Persians with a European background in Iran, or Persia at the time. So those marginalized people, many problems, refugees crisis, and then Phaedra hangs herself. And following that, Siavash does the same. And in the end, we realize that the whole place is a nightmare of the king. The nightmare that we all live, I believe, in this world, the big chaos. One of the main problems of the play was that, in my perspective, King wasn't doing the right thing. But I had to ask him to do that because otherwise the play wouldn't work out. It wouldn't be dramatic. So I tried to change him from a bad politician to a very concerned king. He once says to his son that, you know, if I'm protecting my people, my borders, whatever, if I'm concerned about those suicide attacks or whatever, it's because a father looks after his children first, then for his neighbors. I belong to my nation and my land, that's why. But it wasn't the only problem. Another problem for me was being a second speaker of English, especially having some poems in my play, like when I wrote and read for you now. Those poems were written for one of my ex-beloved. And she was the person who I never started a relationship with, like Phaedra never started a relationship with politics and Siavash in my play. So some part of the play got more personal. And I wanted to kind of have more inspiration through that journey. I also was inspired by music very much. I listen to the music all the time, like one I play for you now. And apart from those works I analyzed, this part of it, being a foreigner living overseas, a lover who didn't start a relationship, helped me to write this play and put it together. Now, I would like you, after knowing a bit about my journey in this 15-minute presentation, ask me questions and bring up the points to help me to finalize my play for the PhD and hopefully more later. Thank you.
Our third presenter is Rachel Spencer.